welcome to our panel. This is actually going to be a historic fireside chat. And it's going to be historic because, to my knowledge, this is the first time in history that a fintech executive and an academic researcher discuss their collaboration at a public event. So I'm David Stolin, and my interest in this is that I am founder chair of Future Finance Fest, which is dedicated to connecting fintechs and academics for deep conversations and collaborations. And hopefully by the end of this session, you will have a good idea about the benefits of such collaborations. Our speakers are accordingly a fintech executive and a finance academic who have been working together. Giuseppe Codazzi is a project manager running Gimme5, an Italian fintech app. Antonio Gargano is a finance professor at the University of Houston in the United States. And so I'll start with Giuseppe. Giuseppe, please tell us briefly about yourself and about Gimme5, including why it has this interesting name.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Maybe I can start from the interesting part, so where the name Gimme5 comes from. And the idea is the high five gesture, so something that we used to give and everyone knows and needs. And the other idea was that €5 was a very low threshold in order to start invest and savings. So from the combination of the two, we have this idea. So give me 5, let's start. You have no excuses to start to save and invest. And that was the beginning of our project. And it was late 2013, 2014 when we started with the idea. And at the beginning, the app was more close to a calculator than a saving app. But little by little, we improved it, the UX and UI, and how it's working quite well. And it was the digital bet, a strong digital bet of an asset management firm, independent asset management firm, which is called AcomeA, and which is the father or the mother of this app, let's say. And maybe something about me, I am a mathematician. I come from the world of applied mathematics. So I start my career in modeling and quantitative models and study the behavior and the churn of clients. And right now in Gimme5, I brought a little bit. I'm still quite focused on data, thanks to also my colleagues Marco. But I manage also the P&L, the product development, and the product strategy. And that's it, I think, for it.
Now, Antonio, at this event, there are not many finance academics. We might say the only two. And they should say that Antonio is probably the world champion in fintech collaborations with academics. He has published numerous articles based on such collaborations in leading academic journals. So please tell us who you are, what you do, and how you first connected with Gimme5.
So my name is Antonio, and I'm a finance professor at the University of Houston and University of Melbourne in Australia. So the goal of my research is to understand how to help individuals with their saving, consumption, and investment decisions using fintech. So why fintech? Because thanks to fintech companies, we can get data that allows us to understand aspects of households' behavior we couldn't observe before. And also because thanks to the high penetration of technology, we can use fintech to reach directly those individuals. So I think about how much time you check your phone on a given day. So because of this type of research I've collaborated a lot with fintechs, because we typically start from data, provided by fintech to understand what users do. And then depending on the fintech capabilities, we run surveys or randomized control trial to further understand behavior, right? Because from the data, you can observe what users do, but you cannot understand motivation. So the way I connected with Gimme5 was because when I was in Melbourne at the time, I was looking at the industry landscape, trying to understand what fintechs were doing, and I came across Gimme5, and I saw that the CEO of Gimme5 was Giovanni Brambilla. I said, I know this guy because this guy hired me 10 years before. After I finished my master, I worked 1 year in the private sector. And so I sent him an email. I said, I'm Antonio Gargano. Do you remember me? And thanks for the interview. You remember me? I explained a bit the type of research I do. And it was very aligned with the mission of Gamify, because the mission of Gamify is to help individuals to save more. And then he put me in contact with Giuseppe, and then how it started. So it started in 2018, and we worked together on our 3 projects, and we are already thinking about the next 2. That.
And so about the projects, you have this long and ongoing collaboration. Can you talk us through maybe 1, 2 examples of studies that you did with Gamify, from why you did these particular studies? I'll start with Antonio, to what you found and why this is interesting from a scientific perspective.
Yes. So the first study was on one very interesting feature in the app, which are saving goals. No? So to create a saving goals, the user has to write like the object of the goal, so what they are saving for, the amount they want to save, and the timeline. Well, this was interesting from an academic perspective because there's a lot of research on why individuals don't save enough, right? So we know a lot about the fictions, the behavioral biases. We know much less on how to help individuals save more. And so we thought, wow, this is a very interesting feature also because it's not obvious that saving goals would help. Because on the one hand, there is a psychological literature that tells us that having goals help, right? So think about, for example, exercising, running in order to do the Boston Marathon as opposed to running for the sake of it. So there is literature that shows that having goals helps individuals. On the other hand, right, say when it comes to setting goals, individuals have to create those goals on their own. And so they might be over optimistic. So create goals that are like too ambitious, or create goals that are maybe just too little, that don't translate to enough saving. So it was an interesting question. The answer was not obvious. So it had all the ingredients to write an interesting paper. So we started looking at the data. We found that setting goals indeed help individuals to save more. And then to understand the reasons, to understand the mechanism, we were able to deploy a survey on a subset of the customer where we asked directly why you created a saving goals, and for those who didn't, why they didn't. So the survey also helped us to understand the motivations, right, for why some individuals use the goals and others didn't, and what was like the psychological mechanism to help them to save more.
So that's the academic perspective. Giuseppe, give your take on these studies. To what extent were the results surprising or interesting? How did they impact your decision making? Did they influence the development of the app? Did they bring in new customers?
Yes, well, Antonio already tells something about Gamify, more or less. Gamify has 3 big pillars on which is built. The one is the one of goal-based. And the second one is the one of automatic rules for saving and investing. And the third is kind of community. So we let people help other people, like family and friends, to reach their own goal. And we are studying little by little, thanks to our R&D, like set apart department, let's say. All this area, we start from the goal-based, as Antonio said, and the interesting part is that we were already we have clear that the goal was a key point for saving for any people and any customer. But we had some intuition on it, but we need to demonstrate causality. And thanks to them, we had it, and that was the starting point to create a user experience where the goal was more centered in our app. So when you open the app, you have your savings and all the cards of your goals, and on that like a bar with the progress. And this is very important because 57% of people says that this progress, not the plus and the minus of your investment, but this progress get closer and closer to the goal, was the key that helps them to keep on being engaged. So yes, probably thanks to them, now we have more engaged clients, and maybe the part of leads and the conversion is another stuff to research on.
Antonio, what is your advice to academics considering collaboration with a fintech, do's and don'ts?
My first advice is that those collaborations typically work if they are mutually beneficial. No, so from the point of from an academic perspective, for us, the main benefit is to get access to interesting data and to publishing with like top tier journals that are very competitive. So having access to unique data really gives you like a competitive advantage. For the fintech, typically the benefit is to get sort of like pre-consultancy, because once we start looking at the data, we have meetings with the company. Can be on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, depends on like also the schedule. And during this meeting, we discuss the result. We discuss about the implications of these results, and this could lead to improvements in the app, as it happened, for example, with Gamify. Or the research can be used for marketing purposes, because when we look at the data, right, we are outside the company, so we are unbiased, and so this gives an external validation regarding like about the results. So first thing is to be mutually beneficial. The second advice I would have is to state those points right at the beginning and to have a plan. So before we start any collaboration, we don't say, okay, give us the data and then we'll be back to you in a few months. No, we have a short document which contains the kind of idea, right? So we want to study, and these ideas are discussed with the company. So we suggest what we think is interesting, though, probably to look at from the data, but we also incorporate feedback from the company. So, okay, what are you interested in? So having this short document with the research questions, with the goals, with the timeline, really, really helps. So my main short advice is have these collaborations have to be mutually beneficial and have like goals in mind and a clear timeline. So as you see, having goals like helps. So not only in savings, but also in research. Okay.
And likewise, Giuseppe, what's your advice to fintechs that are considering collaboration with academic do's and don'ts?
Yes, Antonio already touched most of the do and don'ts. I agree with him, and probably having listening to all these conferences, I see that there are a lot of B2B product and also B2B2C product, and the point of validation is very, very important for this kind of product or companies that they are growing. Since an external validation obviously has a very high level of value. And on the other side, an important part is to take care from the really beginning on your data and your data structure, because probably if I have to think about our collaboration, data is the key. You have to have your data very clear, very ordered, very accessible. And sometimes it's not like this. Probably how you structure your data is not the first point when you grow as a company or as a startup, but it's very, very valuable, especially when you want to have this kind of help from external help. And about the don't be focused on the PR, let's say. This comes straightforward, and don't be afraid about the results. You don't have to start from the results, and I want these results. Obviously, academic doesn't approach your data in that way, and it is important also for your business, because if you are, as I told, if you have an intuition and you find a correlation, you need causality in order to say, okay, this is the key. Otherwise, probably you are focusing on the wrong. You can be focused on the wrong side of the business, or on the wrong side of the service, and that's an important thing you have to avoid, as in my opinion.
Also, because negative results, right, are the type of results that help to improve the business, right? So you learn also not from the negative in a way, than from the positive results. So just to follow up on this.
Very interesting. So. As we wrap up, this is really a unique collaboration, and just imagine that, we thought it was so exciting that you decided to pitch a movie based on your collaboration. And of course, in any dramatic movie, there comes a time, usually around 1 hour into it, when all hope is lost, and then of course things reverse, and there's a moment of triumph. So, for you, just briefly, what would have been this equivalent of, and of course we can exaggerate, right? What would have been the equivalent of this all hope is lost, and then what would be the moment of triumph?
Research has always ups and downs, but to be honest, I don't think we never had this down payments. So the moment, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it is from our side. It was always very positive experience. What we had, sometimes you have moments of uncertainty. There are also moments of excitement. So, for example, before running a survey or before running a platform experiment on the platform, right? So you don't know what could happen, and so it might work or it might not work. So rather than downs, I would say this moment of uncertainty, moment of excitement, but this is part of research. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, and probably the business has more up and down than the research part. So, but everything was quite smooth. Probably the key moment, the key dramatic moment was the very beginning. When you are in a startup project, time is money, and in many business. But at the beginning, you don't have resources in terms of money, in terms of human resources, and so the why you are dedicating this time, these resources, maybe for something that doesn't bring exactly the results you need or you want, because this is, as I told you before, is an important part. So, but once we started, everything was quite smooth and quite easy. Obviously, Antonio and Alberto helps us a lot in this way. Doesn't put too much pressure. They help us on our own data. We trust them and they trust us, and that's what trust is very important. Is kind of collaboration, in my opinions.
And just briefly, the moment of triumph, where in our movie script people would actually be saying, "Give me 5."
Well, obviously, when we got the acceptance letter from the Journal of Finance, which is the most competitive finance journal with an acceptance rate of less than 5%. But beyond that, the idea that this research can help our fellows Italians to save more, that's for us at this stage of our career even more important than another publication.
So, and for us, probably the best moment was to realize that we have found the key or a key in order to help people start saving and invest. Because of course we have clients that start using our app, start saving, start setting a goal, and these are the easy clients. But when you have clients that approach you, you see that they have a need, but probably you are not speaking to them in the right way. Helping them in the right way. And when we saw that goal was so a clear point, so a key point in order to help people focus and start saving and investing, this was a really good result for us on the business side, let's say.
Fantastic. So AcomeA and Fintech, if I may, working together. I hope you enjoyed this chat as much as I did. If there's one overarching takeaway, then it's that perhaps that fintech innovation isn't only about better code, faster growth hacks. It's also about understanding human behavior and incentives and disentangling causality from mere correlation in the process. And if this resonates with you and you're wondering where can they meet more scholars interested in collaboration with fintechs, then you may want to look up Future Finance Fest in Amsterdam this June, right after Money 2020, Friday, June 5th. You can visit 3f.live. And thank you all. And please put your hands together for our speakers, Antonio and Giuseppe.